first month in the Tibetan calendar. So the Tibetan New Year starts with 15 days, which are called days of miracles, in which in each day the Buddha performs some miracle in order to subdue arrogance or other disturbing emotions of beings. And after 15 days, we arrived at the most special day in the first month of the Tibetan year. So it's called Days of Miracles. So we're having a few activities here at the center today. Geshe-la gave teachings in the morning. Then we're going to do some recitation. And after that, if you guys have some questions, general questions, or something that you would like to ask Geshe-la, then we can also do that.
Okay, so we can start on page 240, where it says refuge in generating bodhicitta. Sangye choran sogi chonam la chanchu padu dani kapsu chi dagi jin sogi pe sonam ki cholam penche sangye drupa sho Sangye choran sogi chonam la chanchu padu dani kapsu chi dagi jin sogi pe sonam ki cholam penche sangye drupa sho Sangye choran sogi chonam la chanchu bardu dani kapsu chi dagi chin sogi pe sonam ki dola penche sangye drupa sho. And then to page 28, and we do this in English. With the thought desiring to liberate transmigratory beings, I always take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until the heart of enlightenment is achieved. With perseverance, acting with wisdom, compassion, and loving kindness in front of the Buddhas for the benefit of sentient beings, I generate the thought of full enlightenment. With the thought desiring to liberate transmigratory beings, I always take refuge in Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until the heart of enlightenment is achieved. With perseverance, acting with wisdom, compassion, and loving kindness in front of the Buddhas for the benefit of sentient beings, I generate the thought of full enlightenment. With the thought desiring to liberate transmigratory beings, I always take refuge in the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until the heart of enlightenment is achieved. With perseverance, acting with wisdom, compassion, and loving kindness in front of the Buddhas for the benefit of sentient beings, I generate the thought of full enlightenment. Everywhere may the ground be pure, free of bubbles and so forth, as level as the palm of the hand, in the nature of sapphire and soft. Savior of all sentient beings without exception, divine destroyer of unbearable hordes of Maras and their forces, perfect knower of all things without exception, Bhagawan, together with your retinue, please come here. May the divine and human offerings, both actually arranged and mentally emanated, become clouds of finest Madhavadra's offerings, filling the entire realm of space. And there's a mantra at the bottom of page 29. Om Nama Bhagavate Vajra Sawa Pramadana Tata Gataya Ake Samyat Sam Buddhaya Tayata Om Vajra Vajra Maha Vajra Maha Tejra Vajra Maha Vida Vajra Bodhicitta Vajra Maha Bodhi Manda Pasa Kramana Vajra Sawa Kama Avarana Vishadana Vajra Soa Om Nama Bhagavate Vajra Sawa Pramadana Tata Gataya Ake Samyat Sam Buddhaya Tayata Om Vajra Vajra Maha Tejra Vajra Maha Vida Vajra Bodhicitta Vajra Maha Bodhi Manda Pasa Kramana Vajra Sawa Kama Avarana Vishadana Vajra Soa Om Nama Bhagavate Vajra Sawa Pramadana Tata Gataya Ake Samya Sam Buddhaya Tayata Om Vajra Maha Tejra Vajra Maha Vida Vajra Bodhicitta Vajra Maha Bodhi Manda Pasa Kramana Vajra Sawa Kama Avarana Vishadana Vajra Soha. By the power of the truth of the three rare sublime ones, the blessings of all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the great wealth, the complete two types of merits, and the pure and inconceivable sphere of phenomena, May these piles of clouds of offerings arising through the transformation by the Bodhisattvas, Arya, Samantabhadra, Manjushri, and so forth, unimaginable, inexhaustible, equal in the sky, arise in the presence of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, the 10 directions be received. And then the 7-limb prayer on the next page. I prostrate reverently with my body, speech, and mind. I present clouds of every type of offering, both actually arranged and mentally emanated. I confess all my negative actions and downfalls collected from beginningless time. I rejoice in the virtues of ordinary beings and Aryas. Please remain until the end of cyclic existence and turn the wheel of Dharma for transmigratory beings. I dedicate my own others' virtues to the great enlightenment. Sashi Poiki Shoshe Metok Tamri Rablingshi Nidekambadi Sangye Shindu Nite Owa Yedo Konamdak Shingla Chopashok Daki Chadan Monson Kewe Yodanyan Basum Luda Lonchoche Pam Hamepa Boikilese Nedo Sorangsa Nolwai Chingilo Idam Guru Ratna Mandala Kamiya Tayami. And so now we go to that separate sheet. And we've got these verses to recite. It says there, each of these verses to be recited 3 times, but Geshe-la suggested that what we do is we go through it, recite the verses individually right through, and then do that 3 times. So we go through the whole thing 3 times, okay? Manindra, 16 Sraviras and your entourages, through great compassion, pay attention to me. Please fulfill your past prayers and reveal to me the words of truth. Obeisance to you, whose beautiful, unique golden body always pleases, 1 face, 2 arms, seated in lotus posture, with earth touching and contemplation mudras. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Janjata, holding an incense bowl and a fan, dwelling on the great Mount Titsi, surrounded by 1,300 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Ajita, showing the mudra of meditative contemplation, dwelling on Mount Risi, surrounded by 100 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Varakasam, right hand in threatening mudra and a yak tail on the left, dwelling in Sapta Purana cave, surrounded by 1,400 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Kalika, holding a pair of golden earrings, dwelling in the island of Tamravdipa, surrounded by 1,100 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Sravira Vatraputra, right-handed threatening mudra in the yak tail on the left, dwelling in the land of Singala Dipa, surrounded by 1,000 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Bhadra, right-handed teaching mudra, left in contemplation, dwelling on an island Yamuni, surrounded by 1,200 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Kanakabasta, holding a rope of precious stones, dwelling in a holy place of Kashmir, surrounded by 500 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Kanakabhavatra, showing the mudra of meditative contemplation, dwelling in passionate Kodaniya, surrounded by 700 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Bakula, holding a mongoose in your hands, dwelling on Uttakura, surrounded by 900 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Rahula, holding a precious tiara, dwelling in the island Priyanga, surrounded by 1100 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Chittapantaka, showing the mudra of meditative contemplation, dwelling on Gritya Kuta Pavata, surrounded by 1600 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Pindala Bharavadra, holding a book and an alms bowl, dwelling on Vitya, surrounded by 1000 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Pantaka, holding a book and showing the teaching mudra, dwelling in the heaven of 33, surrounded by 900 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Nagasena, holding a vase and a mendicant staff, dwelling in Mount Vipala Pashva, surrounded by 11. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Gopaka, holding a book in your hands, dwelling in Mount Vikula, surrounded by 1400 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Abaka, holding a soup in your hands, dwelling in a great Mount Himba, surrounded by 1000 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Upasaka Dhammatala, seated before Buddha Amitabha, your whole books, your hair is top knot. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to 4 guardian kings, Dhritarashtra, Viradaka, Vipaska, Vaishravana, who subdue their retinues and guard the 4 gates. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. So we go back again, we recite 2 more times. Manindra, 16 Shaviras and your entourages, through great compassion, pay attention to me. Please fulfill your past prayers and reveal to me the words of truth. Obeisance to you, whose beautiful, unique golden body always pleases, 1 face, 2 arms, seated in lotus posture, with earth touching and contemplation mudras. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shrivera Anjata, holding an incense bowl and a fan, dwelling on great Mount Kitsi, surrounded by 1300 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Janchita, dwelling in the Mount of meditative contemplation, dwelling on Mount Risi, surrounded by 100 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Vanavasan, the right hand in the threatening mudra and yak tail on the left, dwelling in Sapta Parana cave, surrounded by 1400 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Kalika, holding a pair of golden earrings, dwelling on the island of Tambra Vipa, surrounded by 1100 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Bhatputra, right hand in the threatening mudra and a yak tail on the left, dwelling in the land of Singala Vipa, surrounded by 1000 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Bhadra, right hand in teaching Buddha, left in contemplation, dwelling on the island of Yamuna, surrounded by 1200 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Kanakabasta, holding a rope of precious stones, dwelling in the holy place of Kashmir, surrounded by 500 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Kanakabhadra, holding meditative contemplation, dwelling on Pasha Kaudaniya, surrounded by 700 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Bakula, holding a mongoose in your hands, dwelling on Uttarakura, surrounded by 900 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Hula, holding a precious tiara, dwelling in the island of Priyanga, surrounded by 1100 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shavira Chittapandaka, dwelling in Mudra meditative contemplation, dwelling on Kritya Kuta Pavata, surrounded by 1600 arhats. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shrivera Bindala Bharabhadra, holding a book and an alms bowl, dwelling on Vidya, surrounded by 1,000 hearts. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shrivera Pantaka, holding a book and showing the teaching mudra, dwelling on the heaven of 33, surrounded by 900 hearts. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shrivera Nagasena, holding a vase and a mendicant staff, dwelling on Mount Vikpola Vastra, surrounded by 1,200 hearts. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shrivera Kopaka, holding a book in your hands, dwelling on Mount Vikpola, surrounded by 1,400 hearts. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shrivera Habatya, holding a stupa in your hands, dwelling on great Mount Himvat, surrounded by 1,000 hearts. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Upasaka Dhammatala, seated before Buddha Amitabha, who hold books in your hand, top knot. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to the 4 guardian kings, Dhritarashtra, Viradaka, Diparapaksha, Vajravana, who subdue their retinues and guard the 4 gates. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. So then one more time. Manindra, 16 Shriveras and your entourages, through great compassion, pay attention to me. Please fulfill your past prayers and reveal to me the words of truth. Obeisance to you, whose beautiful, unique golden body always pleases, 1 face, 2 arms, seated in lotus posture, with earth touching and contemplation mudras. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shrivera Anjata, holding an incense bowl and a fan, dwelling on great Mount Kitsi, surrounded by 1,300 hearts. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shrivera Ajita, showing the mudra of meditative contemplation, dwelling on the Mount Rishi, surrounded by 100 hearts. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shrivera Vanavasan, right hand and threatening mudra and a yak tail on the left, dwelling in Sapta Purana caves, surrounded by 1,400 hearts. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shrivera Kalika, holding a pair of golden earrings, dwelling in the island of Tamaravipa, surrounded by 1,100 hearts. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shrivera Bhagaputra, right-handed and threatening mudra and a yak tail on the left, dwelling in the land of Simbala Vipa, surrounded by 1,000 hearts. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shrivera Bhadra, right-handed teaching Buddha, left in contemplation, dwelling in the island of Yamuna, surrounded by 1,200 hearts. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shrivera Kanakabasta, holding a rope of precious stones, dwelling in the holy place of Kashmir, surrounded by 500 hearts. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shrivera Kanakabhadra, showing the mudra of meditative contemplation, dwelling in the passionate Kaudaniya, surrounded by 700 hearts. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shrivera Bakula, holding a mongoose in your hands, dwelling at Tarakura, surrounded by 900 hearts. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shrivera Rakula, holding a precious tiara, dwelling in the island of Priyanga, surrounded by 1,100 hearts. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shrivera Chutapantaka, showing the mudra of meditative contemplation, dwelling on Kritya Kuta Pavata, surrounded by 1,600 hearts. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shrivera Pindala Parabhadra, holding a book with an alms bowl, dwelling on Vidya, surrounded by 1,000 hearts. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shrivera Pataka, holding a book and showing the teaching mudra, dwelling in the heaven of 33, surrounded by 900 hearts. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shrivera Nagasena, holding a vase and mendicant staff, surrounded by 1,200 hearts. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shrivera Kopaka, holding a book in your hands, dwelling on Mount Pikala, surrounded by 1,400 hearts. Please bless the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to you, Arya Shrivera Abeka, Holding a supa in your hands, dwelling in the great Mount Himvat, surrounded by 1,000 arhats, please best the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to Upasaka Dhammatala, seated before Buddha Amitabha, you hold books in your hair as a top knot. Please best the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Obeisance to the four guardian kings, Dhritarashtra, Viradaka, Virapaksa, and Vaishravana, who subdue their retinues and guard the four gates. Please best the Guru's life to be stable and the doctrine to flourish. Okay. So then we recite this mantra at the end, bottom of the page there. So we can recite that aloud together 3 times and then silently to complete 21 recitations of that mantra. Om Nama Bhagavata Shakyamuni Tathagataya Ate Samyat Sambuddhaya Tayata Om Mune Mune Mahamuna Yasoa Om Nama Bhagavata Shakyamuni Tathagataya Ate Samyat Sambuddhaya Tayata Om Mune Mune Mahamuna Yasoa Om Nama Bhagavate Sakyamuni Tathagataya Ate Samyat Sambuddhaya Tayata Om Mune Mune Mahamunaya Soha Om Nama Bhagavate. Om Nama Bhagavate Shakyamuni Tathagataya Ate Samyat Sambuddhaya Tayata Om Mune Mune Mahamunaya Soha. And so we do dedication now to complete practice. And so then firstly, Shanti Deva's dedication on page 38. May all beings everywhere plagued by sufferings of body and mind obtain an ocean of happiness and joy by virtue of my merits. May no living creature suffer, commit evil, or ever fall ill. May no one be afraid or belittled with a mind weighed down by depression. May the blind see forms and deaf hear sounds. May those whose bodies are worn with toil be restored on finding repose. May the naked find clothing and the hungry find food. May the thirsty find water and delicious drinks. May the poor find wealth, those weak with sorrow find joy. May the forlorn find hope, constant happiness and prosperity. May there be timely rains and bountiful harvests. May all medicines be effective, wholesome prayers bear fruit. May all who are sick and ill quickly be freed from their ailments. Whatever diseases there are in the world, may they never occur again. May the frightened cease to be afraid, those bound be freed. May the powerless find power. May people think of benefiting each other. As long as space remains and as long as transmigratory beings remain, until then, may I too remain to dispel the suffering of transmigratory beings. And so now to go to page 322. And so then these, with the Tibetan phonetics on page 321. Chotrul sencho rinpoche magye panam ke yochi ke panyam pa me pa yi gone gondu pelwa shog. And then long life for His Holiness. Jiten kandi pende malupa gale jowe sampel yishino katin some tenzin ga so chok kuse tenjin to se lon to shok. And then page 322. Tani ninje sondo jon pelam che salze ganchen tendo go chana pemo tenzin ga sola so wa de so se don lon to sho. And so we long life prayer for Lama Zopa, but also we to bring to mind also you have connection with a particular spiritual teacher, the Lama, or wherever they may be, whoever they may be, then also cultivate this strong wish that they have long life and to continue to give teachings. And think, particularly here, Chenrez's Institute with Geshe Sultram, the benefit that we receive from him teaching us here, that he may have long life and continue to provide us with the Dharma. Tu so chan chin chan gan gel wei ten zin ko pel wei ko zo do po se chu zon ko wei le mon du pa da so du je gon du sha ten shu. Due to all the past, present, and future merits collected by me, and all the merits the 3 times collected by numberless Buddhas and numberless sentient beings, which are completely empty, existing from their own side, may I, who am completely empty, existing from my own side, achieve the state of full enlightenment, which is completely empty of existing from its own side, and lead all sending beings so completely empty of existing from their own side, to that state, which is completely empty, existing from its own side, by myself alone, who is completely empty of existing from my own side. I fully dedicate all these virtues to be able to train just like the hero Manjushri knows reality, and just like Samadhi as well. I fully dedicate all my roots of virtue, the dedication, praise the best, by the all gone beyond, victors of 3 times, in order to have good conduct. For the Dharma King, Tsongkhapa's way of Dharma to flourish, may all signs and obstacles be pacified, and all conducive conditions be complete. Due to 2 types of merits, the 3 times of myself and others, may the teaching of the victorious one, Losandrapa, shine resplendent forever. Okay. So thank you.
Thank you. So after this very long recitation, Geshe-la has 10 more pages of recitations to do. Just to give you the heads up. Of course, that's not just a joke. You can take it easy, but today is a very special day in the Buddhist calendar. So Geshe-la would like to extend this heartfelt greeting for all of you.
That Duchen Dilaya and Chotrul Duchen, the Chotrul Duchen mean Songdasra.
So this particular day in the year is called the Day of Miracles. That's the name of this very special Buddhist holiday.
Is the Injutsu the Chotrul number 2 tone pita and in Injutachi Zontrula Soviet that Gendur Chicheni. 아니 탐킬에 투지 못되면 데모카진 젠다 아니 젠다 셴메버 큐 뒤질이야 쓰기도.
So this particular holiday, Buddhist holiday, is celebrating some miraculous deeds that the Buddha performed. So it is said that there were those days in which the Buddha performed some miracles. There was, now when you look at the backstory, let's say for the whole, this period of days of miracles, they were involved with some, let's say some rivalry or some competing forces. And the Buddha performed some miraculous actions, so to speak, in those days that were motivated by a sense of kindness and sense of care for others. So they all culminated in this day, which is called Days of Miracle.
These are 당한주 남비다 전출실라 온 디펜나직 남라 프리아 살람 here so that 지겨라다 아니 디수 아니 직쇼기 아니 난졸이야 공고치한다 디스키 다 말해왔어요 근데 남라 프로그램 지휘는 남라 포르투갈에서 무슨 사도는 주저야 서버치 아 디수키 게레모도 좀된 디 전출디 아니 주 남죽톤다 전출 소디 아니 좀 된들이야 셴다만데 남주 풀치치 마치 여버 디 이완 트로체네 아니 좀 된들이야 비기다 지 아니 남주 찍다 쟁인 수임 바이네 좀 된디다 먼저 시서 마시나 돈도 깨지 시온디 아니 라운 메버 좀 된들이야 그줘야지 제가 디 니모텔이야 다지 남주 쭉 비기 갑딜레는다 아니 좀 된들이야 젠댕이 좋다 디니모텔다 용서 아니 좀 된디 투텔이야 이원 트로체네 아니 좀 된디 다샤블레 투바인사 아니 tumbayuli gelset only three reshas right.
So it is called the Day of Miracles, and when we think of miracles, what would that mean? You know, it seems that we sometimes like to speak about those miraculous or powerful deeds, like you might think that for example, being able to fly, being able to travel underground and so forth, these are what we call miracles. But as such, it's not that impressive in that there are other living beings that they can do that. So if you can say that for example, that person has this miraculous power, they can fly. Well, birds can fly. Or if you say that, no, they have this miraculous power, they can travel underground. Well, earthworm can travel underground. So as such, those activities, as miraculous activities are not that important. It's not that this is what we seek or that we need to develop. So the type of miraculous deeds that the Buddha display are deeds which are related to the power of the mind, to the development of intelligence. So then through looking at those days of miracles, the main message or the main point in them is to see how far one can go with the mental development. So when you look at the narratives of those days of miracles, they tell about other teachers or other practitioners competing with the Buddha, trying to outdo the Buddha at the point in which the Buddha was alive in India. And the Buddha displayed those activities in order to create that inspiration and then to see that one can actually go far more with their capabilities if we're to develop their own mind, their own intelligence. So in that sense, it said that the Buddha, the Bhagavan, was victorious in all ways, in all manners, in displaying his miraculous activities, which are, in summary, activities of the development, the full development of one's mind.
아니 뒤견된 그 소수 롭존 체디 상기가 송라야 롭존 체와인자 그 딘디 제놈도 오늘 장이 있다 비기게 전부 참긴 기타 포사줘라 오늘 또 다른 표현이 삼성도 갈이 초 디디치게 됐었어.
So Geshe recently had the chance to look at an Indian TV series that depicted the life story of the Buddha, more than 50 episodes, right? So 50 odd episodes. So Geshe watched that with great interest, and also Geshe's background, having studied the Buddhist tradition, which means that studying what the Buddha have taught before, Geshe said that this whole story comes alive in thinking that, well, this being has really come to this world and gave those teachings.
예, 좀 전에 딘디 차고야기 규견 또 마서나 지단 공 총운디게 야부지기 셀이야 총 진주 공에 하장게 아니 잠제 댐비게 우치 되셨어. 잠제 여버점 마세 예 셔럽진지 가리 통 가리 제바이네야 남산 텔이야 아니 제바이요 되지 아니 갑 투디 페나타지 아니 갸부 갸시 쫑탄 그 톨이야 참마년바 랑겔 셴파위야게 샤와 최고의 인생 가르친 최고세 되니 갑 투디게 따지 릴리전 속에 아니 본람 슈갸데야 콘졸라야 처버 피데야 대한직 심지 냠타 tunru 냠타 참매버기 아니 비 소제체네 착취 피데야라 소바 티들이야 믹스가 좀 된들이야 더바 제가 마음을 쉬지 가르친 지고세 또 제네 나 딘지 제위기 내 라야기 쳐도 아니 까툴레야 땡치니 깝 투디기 따지 무디비기 따지 베변로 소바 깝 투디기 리셰다 딘지 쇼라야 케브 프로덕션 용자 도술 샵 뚜니 존디기 지위 렌트 마라와치 안 코랑 그 투섬 시니 비기 따지 유 근내루 조당다 자르친 투섬 시온디기 아니 타마 아니 최 탐지기 내루 지마 지신 켄진니 대단 손대기 잠지 어디 용수 공원디기 아니 순대치 투바이나야 제가 간지 땅바이나야 아니 토바 매대바 용수 저바 이원 초투야 딘지 깨우시 겨도 왔다 간지.
And in looking at the life story of the Buddha, it is depicted either in that show that Geshe was watching or just in the common life story of the Buddha. So the story says so. The story tells that he was born into a royal family, grew up as a young princeling in a royal court. And in that royal court, of course, the Buddha was born into into a life of abundance. And he was naturally more disposed to being a loving person, right? So he had this natural sense of care for others, and was also quite smart, but also very inquisitive in that he constantly looked at the royal court and what people were doing in the royal court, and lots of questions came up in his mind. Like, for example, why is it that we need to behave in a way that we seek our own victory if it comes at the expense of others? Why are we deep-rooted in that attitude of seeking our own victory, even if it comes at the defeat of others? He looked at spiritual practices that were quite common at the time in India around the royal court. So, for example, making a lot of prayers, making offerings to certain objects of refuge, making offerings to deities, divinities, and so forth, and neglecting the impoverished. So such questions came up in the Buddha's mind, and at some point, he sought his own path of spiritual quest. So when you look at a traditional story, it was said that he spent a few years in doing ascetic practices until at the end he was able to become completely enlightened with respect to the way that things exist in an actual sense. So it is said that at the end of his spiritual quest, he understood the way that everything exists, the reality of everything that exists, and thereby paired up with this skillful means and also this attitude of care for others, he then started to teach this reality to others. So now it was all along that time, he was having discussions and debates with people that were also interested in spirituality in India. So there were those people that we call rishis, or the great sages and Brahmins and so forth. So through this interaction with them, questions and answers, and also seeking to understand reality, once he realized the way that things exist in an actual sense, and then started to teach it to others, it says that through this insight into reality and having developed control over his mind, he was able then to also, you can say, outshine other philosophers or other philosophies, in the sense that no one could rival him in terms of having an insight into reality. So it became very impressive, very inspiring, became majestic, so to speak, or very powerful. So those are the things that we reflect upon in relation to this particular time, which is the Day of Miracles.
아니 사든드다 먼저 지금 로드 트루세디 상물로그 샘감려야 대원대바다 동안 문제바 찬님 임바치려야 먼저 미기 드웨기 아니 직 소차신 랑기 디기기 체도 소차신려야 비기다 직 세워체대 아니 배주체대도 자원인 장부 매바치려야 아니 시미 아니 지금 직장 또 쓰기도 하더라. 아니 지금 망출을 써봤다. 대상이 있는 거다. 망출을 써봐. 디딜이야. 점지 싸우는 매바지. 그러 망출 용이 제일이야. 아니 비기게 타투 제부터디 아니 미망부슈 지기 소셔야 아니 남 카들 줘야 아니 부부 망부슈 타투를 내야 지기 마토베기 펜토 가야메바 시치네 망투로 소바 디기들이야 돈이 쇼 난가도 아스라.
Not only that, looking at developing an insight into reality, it's also the very understanding how all of us are equal, the six beings from the six realms of existence. So within the Buddhist tradition, we speak of different levels of existence, six realms of existence. So understanding that all of us within the six realms of existence are exactly the same in seeking happiness and well-being and wanting to avoid suffering and pain. And that being the case, then how will it be honest or fair to act in a way that is harmful to others? So also developing an insight into that, the insight into the equality of ourselves as living beings in terms of what we want, happiness, and what we do not want, which is suffering. So not only this point is relevant in general, but particularly now when we think of what what the world has been going through in the last few weeks and months and so forth. Also, the futility of wars and conflicts and so forth. So recognizing that we act on the basis of seeking happiness and well-being and wanting to avoid suffering and pain, and then thinking, are wars and conflicts and so forth, are they going to give us as living beings consummate happiness and well-being? Is that a plausible outcome of war and conflict and so forth? It is impossible for such wars and conflicts that inflict harm and injury upon others to result in consummate happiness and welfare of others. It brings about, of course, a state of dispossession. We can see in the media, in the news, how it costs people life. People are being displaced. Children, young people have, they bear deep scars from war and so forth. So it is quite evident that seeking this attitude, or taking this attitude of seeking on victory at the expense of others, is not bringing consummate happiness and well-being to living beings.
대다도 상황이 다지 농주가 자와도디 안가는서 저 밀라 유비 저 소차 셴리 캐버 바빈 저 미기르 랭기라 유비기 아니 장바당 아니 셔럽디 다야 콤벌담마 투비 규긴래 투겨버 시체네 아니 미기 라진 랭기라 유비 장바다 자와 아니 셔럽기야기다 탑 마식 된지네 아니 다가서 간지 데빌람라야 아니 틱낭이 템버디 아니 템버 샤제면 콩 냐르치긴 받다 아니 콩기 남탈당 콩기 송 샤교기 아니 뎁토솔라야 테네 돔치캬베네 갸차 갸탕가 통투야 레샤스 딘자 안가도 소수기다 리바 슈크잼니 아니 좀된 디기 라브자토다야 테스 시투바이나 소수쌈 마임베 아니 잠블링기 밀이야 간지 펜토 투야게 미버식 야시야다 마라사레스로 딜당아 딜 젠젠치야 소로디 예삼 디레샤스.
And if you wonder what are the underlying reasons that we still behave in that way, well, it is clear that the underlying reason for that is, first of all, not having enough love and concern for others and not having enough compassion for others. So then when we look at the life story of the Buddha, when we look at the teachings of the Buddha, what they teach us is how to take on something that we have for us as human beings naturally. We have a certain degree of concern for others, love for others, compassion to others, and we also have a certain degree of wisdom, and they can be developed. So looking at teachings that teach us how to develop a greater degree of love and compassion and wisdom will result in not only being of benefit to ourselves, but also being of benefit to others. So then in looking at days as today, which is called Day of Miracle, one of the Buddhist holidays, the main thing Geshe reckons that we remember, that we think of with days like this, is that we have, first of all, the ability to develop our mind. We have the ability to develop love and concern for others. We have an ability for developing wisdom, and we have an ability to do so, to be able to be of benefit to others. And for that end, we rely upon the Buddha's teachings. So thank you very much. Have you got any questions? Mm-hmm. All right. Okay. So I'll just repeat the question for the recording. So first off, is Geshe aware of also the miracles that Jesus performed, like the fishes and the loaves and walking on waters and so on and so forth? So that's one question. And then also, Geshe mentioned that the miracles the Buddha performed mainly based on the mind, but are there stories that Geshe can share, or anecdotes with stories about miracles that the Buddha has actually performed? Yeah. Dila Tomba Meshikar wala. Tomba Meshikayan, the Quran Kutsu Kapsulayan, the Zumtu, the Daminda thing, rest. Nema the Gesla Kran Kuni US, the Chotam Dere. Cho Niba Dilayan, Penadilla Casa de la Logu, then the Yondachi, the Nya Tampal, Mikawala Nyatea, Tampaletea, then the Jik Damita Yore, Nema Kuni US, the Chotam Dere. Dayan Niba Dila. 그런 데 상계 좀된 대기 좀좀 땡딴디 소기 생기 아마나 셰라 루주기 거기 초디 레스넨치 소인바 저선디 민바 문에 된데 좀좀 땡기 로기 된다지 셰수지 여러베스 그런 로기 된다지 직 내가 준지 선두와이나스
tomba mashkagi logi konyoyes an jawrumuchi kaduyneya man zambali nawlaya tembo mabu cheyores and some logi kanchi ani draw melaya pensam jancheni and sunguyores or tindi sunguyenza to samalo bigi ta chi kubachi webigi yul shata rese ani susu tsavelami sunguyenza nga tagaran yembachiya ichichiya modo telaya chebato da tinike chimes niro shu chimes.
So I guess I have had before about some of the deeds from the life story of Jesus, but also Geshe seeing himself as a student and a follower of His Holiness the Dalai Lama. His Holiness has been speaking for a long time of how, since there are different religions and different traditions in the world, and also teachers that have arisen throughout history in different religions, different spiritual traditions. When you look at the message in general, the message is wanting to benefit others, an altruistic intention. So when you look at different traditions and different religions, His Holiness has been saying for a long time that you need to come to appreciate that altruistic intention aspect of different traditions, wanting to be of benefit to others. And Geshe says that for him, being a follower of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, being one of his root teachers, Geshe tries to also take it to heart and also to be respectful and appreciative of such great beings that taught in other traditions that did perform those deeds of being of benefit to others.
Then something that Zuntru yet years something digita pena Zuntru chikti the one shig to seon digi and Mayan Kimala Zeta and in Jigden Denita Gombanyang Deni Pita Gandhi Gachunzilia and Delia Shuyava Sini and in Malaya Chutan Cheddar and Zuntru Togita lying in Gandela Pevjani and Yarni Chigirilia Shahushi that Dawsum Rores me Sedicina Dawsum Grilia and Layula Shucheni and Malaya Chut Tembi Zebachigores then it did tell me and Javalhal Babi Duchen Delia and Mula Mark Zuntru Togi Favoris the summer.
So there are different events or stories that were told about the life story of the Buddha. So, since you asked if Geshe can share kind of one small short story, there was one story, for example, that tells of the Buddha having these clairvoyant faculties, or you can say that super insight. He was able to see that his mom, after passing away, was in a realm of existence that was Tushita, the land of joy. So the Buddha, with his power, he said in that story, traveled to that realm of existence, and for 49 days during the summer, the monsoon season, stayed there and taught his mother, gave teachings to his mother. Following that, he came back to this worldly realm. So this is actually connected with another Buddhist festival that is called the Descent from the Heavens, in which, so to speak, the Buddha came back from that heavenly realm after teaching his mother, came back to this earth. So such stories are about miracles or those super deeds, let's say, are found in the Buddhist tradition.
Sanji Sonji Nalalaya, Sonji Nit Sombalaya, 도만이 수소소 코스.
Mm.
까미 직직 송디게 비 송서 도자랑 랑기. 아니 가리 콘데바티 아니 콘로야 딘디기. that don't true.
Okay. And also sometimes when the qualities of the Buddha are being described, it says that the quality of the speech of the Buddha is that in one teachings of the Buddha, in that sense, you can say that it's one utterance, one sentence of speech. The Buddha can teach a variety of beings and teach them in different languages or different points and so forth. So it is said that the Buddha has such qualities, but then when you look at that from the perspective of miracles, well, you can say that that's a miraculous power, to say one thing, but then to be able to teach living beings from different backgrounds or dispositions according to their needs.
아니 산점된 데이터 추다 가서다 셰르기 파르트친 바. 유음 셰르기 파르트치면 도세. 그러다 추 내루 타르투 바티 송 카둘래야. 아니 자국 분부를래야 송 바레스. 갑 드디 공기 자국 분부를래야. 아니 셰르기 파르 침바 송 갑 다가랑래야. 뒤 다가랑래야. 공기다 그 전투 도기. 아니 주버 현대 신기 린 잠블린 현대 신라야. 아니 규송에라 소바. 아니 최신 송에라 소바. 다디 마무 쇼요레스. 라. 다디 레 마무 쇼요레스.
Also, there is there's the account of how the Buddha taught the perfection of wisdom sutras. So there's a set of teachings that the Buddha gave that is called the perfection of wisdom. The sutras that teach the perfection of wisdom are called the mother sutras because the wisdom aspect is called the mother, the female aspect, wisdom. So the mother sutras, the perfection of wisdom sutras. And the Buddha taught them in a place in India that is called Rajgir, or the king's court. So it is said that the Buddha was dwelling in that place. He was giving teachings on the perfection of wisdom. But then at the same time, because the Buddha had those miraculous powers, he was also able at the same time to give teachings in other realms of existence. He was teaching the tantras. He was giving other teachings to other living beings at the same time. And all of that was attributed to his strong powers.
간신 돌 뒤와이나다 나나 데상거 돌 뒤와이나 로 니도 주기 콘라야다 로기 망 제일 디다 로 니도 주기 콘라야 안 좀 된데 잠블린라야 페바레스 갑 드디 송 샤교기 라브샤디 뒤 대리 임바이마이나 쇼지 공고 짠다 모여서 차대바디 아니 데모카티 지 순트리.
But then you get the stories in the Buddhist tradition, and then you need to think about them in a particular way. Geshe-la's way of thinking about this whole topic of miracles is to think that, well, you have the life story of the Buddha. He lived in India, he was born in India, lived in India 2,600 years ago. He taught in India, and the teachings of the Buddha still remain with us. Not only do they still remain with us, also 2,600 years later, they're still relevant and they're still beneficial and necessary for us, which you can say it in itself is a miracle, so to speak. All right. So let's call it a session, call it a day, and get to the fun part, which is cake and chai.